Hello, we are so happy that you're joining us, wherever you are in the world. I'm Victor.
Hello, everyone. I'm Agnes.
And I am Louis.
We are the co-founders of Foodland Ventures, the VC and accelerator for food tech, and the host of today's event. Together with Agnes and Louis, we'd like to welcome you to the 2021 APAC Food and Beverage Innovation Summit. Today, we are bringing together a community of innovators ranging from food industry heavyweights to rising food tech startups as a way to form connections, discuss and exchange ideas, and spark future collaboration globally, and especially here in the APAC region.
COVID has been terrible for the food and beverage industry, but it has also given us a chance to re-evaluate and prepare for the future. The way we live and eat has changed. E-commerce and delivery has seen massive growth, resulting in the emergence of cloud kitchens and digital payments. New technologies are helping to integrate Asia's fragmented supply chains from farm to table. Even underserved sectors like alternative protein are seeing strong newcomers. For players in food and agriculture, technology adoption is no longer an option. It's a must. But to solve the challenges ahead, we need startups, investors, corporates, and food brands to work together.
From my experience working with hundreds of F&B brands, many of them are already reinventing themselves. They are automating their operations with hardware and software, and they are delivering more convenience to consumers than ever before. The F&B industry we used to call traditional is now ready to grow and scale with innovative technologies.
If you're an innovator that is excited about the advancement of our food industry, regardless if you're from the technology or the food industry side, this platform is for you. From all of us at Foodland Ventures, thank you again for joining us today and enjoy the 2021 APAC Food and Beverage Innovation Summit.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm Andrea Xu, the Director General of Ministry of Science and Technology of Taiwan. On behalf of most, I'm very happy to be with all of you who bring vast expertise to the APAC F&B Innovation Summit. The Ministry established Taiwan Tech Arena, so-called TTA, in 2018 to strengthen Taiwan's startup ecosystem, to translate research into startups, and help Taiwanese startups go global. Through these years, we are proud to see the thriving startup ecosystem within Taiwan and happy to have more new collaboration and partnerships in the future. Foodland is Taiwan's first food tech VC and accelerator. We are excited to get them on board in TTA to offer a variety of supports for Taiwan food tech startups. Their support including hosting startups at TTA, introducing resources like investors, talents, corporate partners, and providing vertical food and beverage connections through their accelerator program. Today's summit shows the strong support from Foodland to the Taiwan startup ecosystem. By gathering all important stakeholders within food and beverage industries, I'm sure we will have fruitful discussion on both challenges and opportunities for the F&B industry and the next wave of innovation for Taiwan and the APAC region to the world. We wish all startups to seize the opportunity and expand your business at a rapid speed. Thank you for joining today's program, and please enjoy it.
Distinguished guests, dear friends from the private sector and media, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure and honor to be invited by Foodland Ventures, a valuable partners of Star Terrace Kaohsiung, to attend the APAC Food and Beverage Innovation Summit 2021. It has been a challenging year for the global food and beverage industry. The COVID-19 pandemic has led to significant changes for all the players. The food ecosystem is evolving to adopt new opportunities in a variety of areas, such as operating models, markets, channels, products, and services. International startups focus on bringing innovation solutions to existing problems of traditional business, like reducing cost of manpower and brick-and-mortar stores, improving ingredients management and control, analyzing customer data and market trends, etc. Startup Terrace Kaohsiung has the same vision. We are exploring more opportunities for startups through market validation. And we are bringing together outstanding international and domestic startups to create win-win situations by making innovative solutions to market demand and industrial pain points. Startup Terrace Kaohsiung aims to build a global entrepreneurial cluster for 5G, AIoT, smart contents, smart applications, and maritime harbor sectors. I sincerely hope you can visit its awesome office in the Kaohsiung Software Technology Park. Today's agenda is carefully designed, and it is a pleasure for us to listen to expert insight from all over the world. I want to thank Fuland Venture once again for the warm invitation. I can't wait to see all that Startup Terrace Kaohsiung and all of you will accomplish in the future. I wish you a very successful event, good health and growth of your business. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor, Agnes, Louis, Andrea, and Betsy for opening the APAC F&B Innovation Summit for us. My name is Leo Lin. I'm the Community and Marketing Manager here at Fuland Ventures, and I'll be your host for the morning sessions. For the rest of the day, we have 7 panel discussions, 28 speakers from across the APAC region to North America lined up to offer their insights on the most critical topics in the F&B industry. There'll be 3 tracks laid out on the left side of our screen: the main stage, the expo booth, and the networking area. The main stage is where the 7 panel discussions will take place, and also where you are right now. Networking is where you can meet another attendee virtually for 3 minutes. And expo is where you can meet startups and partners showcased in the summit today. Now let's get ready for our first panel discussion: Revolutionizing the Food Supply Chain in the New Normal Economy, featuring Takashi Okutani from Oisixia Daiichi, Taku Tanaka from Camario, Lenny Seng from Droppy, and Yu Li from Caitang Agriculture. The speakers in this panel have shown strong resilience during the COVID pandemic, using digital solutions to redefine the fresh produce supply chain.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yu De. It's my pleasure to be here, host 3 of the very prestigious guests to share their view and share their business, especially in the very large Asian region market. The topic we're talking about today is revolutionizing the food supply chain in the new normal economy. So the new normal is actually we are getting used to the COVID crisis. The crisis has been long, and they bring about different challenges in different areas of our business. In food supply chain in particular, we face a lot of uncertainty, and it destroyed a lot of business, but it also provided a lot of new opportunity for us, especially for the internet business to think about. So here we have host 3 very deep knowledge experts to share their views and their business to our audience. Here we have Takashi-san from Oasis in Japan. Also, thank you, Takashi-san, for coming. We also have Taku-san from Camario from Vietnam. Thank you for coming. Lenis from Droppy from Malaysia.
Happy to be here.
Okay, I think I take the next couple minutes to have our guests to share about themselves and their business. Takashi-san from Oasis in Japan, please share about yourself and your business.
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, my name is Takashi Oktani. I'm working at the Oasis Daiichi. Well, my main task is like a C-level task I have, and Chief Omnichannel Officer. Well, Chief Omnichannel Officer means that they're not only taking care of the online business, but also taking care of some offline business. For example, in O6, we have a meal kit called Kit O6. We kind of distributing those products to the supermarket. And at the same time that I care about like a nursery, have like kindergarten food delivery service, just like for B2B business. So furthermore, that I take care of like corporate communication. So I hope I can briefly explain that what we're doing in Japan, and hopefully that we can communicate with like a company like Camario or other companies, and see what's happening in not only in Japan but also in the Asian market. Yeah, that's briefly my introduction.
Lenis, co-founder and CEO of Droppy. Can you please talk about yourself and the business?
Great. First off, thanks guys for having me today on this stage here. Happy to share a little bit more about what we do. So basically, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Droppy. We've been around for close to 5 years now, and our goal here is to revolutionize the way businesses buy and sell in bulk. So we at Droppy are a B2B e-commerce enabler that allows brands, distributors to service local mom and pop store. So whether it's F&B outlets or grocery stores in a faster, better, and smarter, cheaper way. So we use our AI-driven predictive analytics to understand the inventory movement so that auto replenishment actually happens across each store. So this sort of reduce and minimize wastages and also optimize the way that inventories are stocked up on each shelves across these mom and pop stores. So we're currently servicing more than 100,000 mom and pop stores across Southeast Asia today. We have presence in Malaysia and Indonesia. And I'm excited to share a little bit more about what we do and my learnings here over the course of this pandemic.
Next week, it's come to Taku-san, co-founder and CEO of Camario. Please share about yourself and the business.
Hi, thanks for having me. So my name is Taku, CEO and co-founder of Camario. So I'm Japanese, but live in Vietnam for almost 8 years. So basically what we do is B2B e-commerce similar to Droppy. But we are more focused on like F&B stores, which is like restaurant, hotel, cafe. I used to run the restaurant business before in Vietnam. And basically in Vietnam, 98% of restaurants are SME, which is like small and mid shop. So they don't have like purchasing volume and purchasing resource and stuff. So basically idea is we try to aggregate the volume from the bunch of stores and directly talk to like farmers, producer and factory, and we do buy bulk and do the warehousing and last mile delivery to the customer. Yeah, so basically we're gonna also try to do like a simpler way, the better way, the cheaper way for the supply chain itself in the food industry for the store in Vietnam. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Taku-san. Last, I introduce myself. My name is Yu De. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Caitan Agriculture. Taku-san is my old friend. We are literally doing very similar business, but just I'm in Taiwan. We are AI-driven e-commerce platform connecting farm to table, helping the supply chain to be more efficient digitally. Okay, so here comes to our first question. Okay, so please share with our audience what kind of challenges of the COVID has bring about to your business. Maybe we start with Takashi-san.
Okay, we'll explain about what we're doing in Japan under the new normal economy. Well, basically, that the Oasis Daiichi is a B2C subscription platform business, and we are serving the fresh organic grocery food to the individual customer. In general, that I think Numa provided a good opportunities for us to like make somehow the opportunity of purchasing grocery from online not only just a safe, but also kind of chance to provide that which I think purchasing that the grocery product through online is kind of enjoyable, and also the support that the good kind of enjoyable lifestyle. So for us in general, it's really good chance to expand the business. Well, that's at the kind of our current situation. But getting that the COVID-19 is getting normal and normal, we have to think about our customers gradually going back to the normal life. So purchasing the product in a supermarket, that means offline. So in my task, I also serving that try to serve that the many meal kit at the supermarket. And also, we also kind of, launching the new services like, enjoy the restaurant food in house. Well, that means that, we kind of get a good recipe from the nice Japanese restaurant and then prepare it for as a ready to cook. So like a meal kit. And then customers start to enjoy those products in your house. That's also really good trend. We are kind of expanding the more customer. Hopefully, I can stick to the good customers in longer time, and then well, I would really hope that we can make that purchasing online and through online, but by purchasing the good grocery product is more normal and normal. That's what we are looking for. Yeah, that's basically what we're doing. Yeah.
How about the challenges Lynn is facing?
Well, in case of the challenges, we have to talk about customers. I said, going back to the normal, and then fortunately, Japanese are getting vaccinated so quickly, and they're happy to going back to that purchasing product in offline. So that means that most of the customer, I have to say that join our platform because of the COVID-19. So that means that we have to think about how to keep their interest, or like how to serve them more and more better way, and to keep our relationship. That's the good challenges. Yeah. And also that I think in this purchasing some products through online have another kind of problem, like that delivering products through trucks, or like using a lot of packages, and say causing that a lot of waste. So in case of SDGs point of view, we have to think about how to minimize those kind of waste. I mean, in terms of food waste, I can make it. We are serving that a very good point, because it's ready to cook. Once you cook, no need to waste anything. But in case of the packaging, we have a lot of waste. So that's we have to solve that immediately. That's kind of the challenges we are now facing. Yeah.
Thank you, Takashi-san. We might dive into some of the areas later, but I'd like to move the spotlight to Linus. How about the experience you had in the past 1 or 2 years?
Yeah, so I think the COVID pandemic has really shifted the way businesses procure items, right? At the start of 2020, we've seen that there's a lot of lockdowns happening, not only across like different states, but even cross-border wise, like products are being, the shipments across import exports are being restricted or limited. So what we've noticed is that in Malaysia, a lot of these consumptions like FMCG products, or even daily like goods or inventories that FMB owners are actually procuring, tends to be from international products. And because of this restriction and the reduction of such movements, this requires like these businesses to look for alternatives. So what happened was that we saw a huge shift in terms of businesses, whether it's F&B outlets, retail outlets, now starting to look for local suppliers in order to actually procure this. Now, the problem with that is that in the past, local suppliers didn't anticipate such demand. So what happened was that they've seen in terms of the supply, they couldn't keep up with the number of demand that's being requested in the market. So, but that was easily resolved over a couple of months, right? But basically, we've noticed is that now, even after 12 to 18 months since when it first started, we've seen that shift, and this shift is here to stay. It's not the fact that they are going to go back to sourcing for more international products. I think they're pretty much happy with the alternatives, which is quite refreshing to a lot of these local sellers that are providing or providing their products on to these like global retailers as well. But I think another issue that popped up during the pandemic, especially in 2021, that we saw was the request of more credit financing. So a lot of times these businesses, especially when you're working in retail, your cash flow is extremely tight. You'll be super lucky if you have cash at bank for about 2 to 3 months. Typically, you only have about a month cash at bank that could sustain your business, but that's pretty much it, right? And with the reduced traffic of walk-in traffic and whatnot, this significantly has cut the revenue of these businesses. So when it comes to procurement, or when they have like they're looking to actually purchase inventories, they're now looking for ways to stretch their cash flow even more. So typically on average basis, it's on a 30 days credit terms. Now they're requesting for 60 or 90 days, some even 120 days. Now, because suppliers as well do not want to take such risks to provide such or lengthen such credit terms, this is where we come in to facilitate and mediate that. We have all these data and information to show credibility of these mom and pop stores. So that's why we work together with the banks, our financial partners, to actually provide this credit facility for them, so that they're able to stretch it even up to 120 days, so that they're able to actually leverage on our platform to roll this cash around and survive throughout this pandemic, and in hopes that in 2022, it's a much better year for them.
I think there are a huge risks associated with the supply chain, and I'm glad that there's an innovative way to deal with it. Maybe we can dive into a deeper in some specific area later. And here we go, Taku-san. I think the first time we met, 1 week later, the airport shut it down in 2020. And what was the story after that?
Yeah. I think I think Vietnam is one of the strict country in terms of like a COVID lockdown and whatever. It's not like they are very strict because they are just like a one government, so they can decide immediately tomorrow shut down, and everyone has to follow, right? So it's maybe similar to China. So as a founder, firstly, it's I mean, everyone is very difficulty, like like taking care of like the team, like expectations, because the government change immediately from tomorrow. So we need to adapt many changes every single week or every month and stuff. Like that's happening for like last like 1 to 2 months, 2 years. And then like Vietnam finished the hard lockdown like at the end of the September this year. So it's getting back to normal. And I think a lot of people talk about like because of pandemic, a lot of people shift into the online. It's partially true, I feel, but in Vietnam, actually, a lot of people is getting back to offline. The reason why is like I think that Vietnam has a lot of shop and stores. If you look at a number of stores per population, Vietnam is one of the highest in Asia, which means there is a lot of small, medium shop near you, and 99% of people are having their own bike, so they can drive easily. So actually shifting from offline to online in Vietnam is not as big as other country. That's what I actually feel. And I see a lot of e-commerce players started to do like online grocery and stuff during lockdown, but after lockdown finish, actually like their GMV is going back to like the normal, right? Pretty much normal level. We do B2B, so it's a bit different because B2B is not like no offline shop. No, we anyway deliver, so it doesn't affect so much. But yeah, so that's maybe sounds not interesting, but I feel like it's not really shifting too much for online for the B2C, I feel, in Vietnam. Yeah.
Thank you, Taku-san. Any insight about each other?
Yeah, I have a question for both of you. Well, compared to like B2C business, that means that, I mean, especially like financing issues, and basically once lockdown happened, then, your business will stop, right? Well, how you guys survive? I mean, after that, maybe COVID or like gradually the normal lifestyle is coming back, and I think businesses quickly catch up. Well, I think your business is kind of serving for the great farmers also. So what kind of communication or conflict you guys can solve? I mean, especially in between the farmers, like suppliers, and then restaurants. I mean, I think in case in Vietnam it's okay, maybe quickly recover. But how about in Malaysia? Yeah.
Yeah. I can take this first. Thanks for the awesome question. So basically, when it comes to digital adoption, right? You're talking about farmers, fishermen that are generally don't have much tech savviness. And in terms of education and the privilege to actually have that experience in going online is very, very small. So what we've noticed is that we have a partnership with the local Malaysia Ministry of Agriculture across the last 18 months to enable and gear up more sales, bringing their fishermen and farmers, all their local produce online and help them sell. Now, what we've learned is that if you leave them with the tools, they will not do it. They understand e-commerce, B2C e-commerce platforms like Lazada, Shopee. They understand that, but they don't use it, right? And mainly it's because of the behavior. They fear that if this is something that's new that they learn, will this impact their business? How hard is it for learn? They rather not. They rather focus on what they do know. So basically what happened is that over the last 18 months when we noticed this, we actually deploy and started growing a community of what we call local activators. So these local activators, they act as, think of them like consultants, and they are typically situated in rural areas to work face-to-face, hand-in-hand, together with these farmers, fishermen, and it could also be even local retailer mom and pop stores who have no idea how to actually go online, but these guys come there, and typically they're very, very young. So most of our community activators are less than 30 years old. We equip them with a, whether it's an iPad or like a smartphone that is installed with our app in there. So when they actually help provide such services, they help them to place orders or sell onto our platform. So this is something that we do aggressively, in terms of how can we educate them, how can we help them to shift that offline to online. Because even today, like when we even go launch in Indonesia, it's the same thing. A lot of these mom and pop stores, a lot of these traditional businesses, the way that when they look at B2B and digital adoption wise is still very nascent. They still prefer pen and paper. Like, I kid you not, traditional wholesalers, even with big, large international brands like Nestle, Unilever, and whatnot, they still carry a big logbook where they write pen and paper for orders, and they still do that up to date. So we still need some form of education or more aggressive education in the market to help them shift from that offline behavior to online.
I see. So younger staff from your company is supporting the farmers to go into that online market, and that's the way they can survive.
Actually, they're actually not under our payroll. We call them community activator because these guys, they are their own entrepreneurs, right? We provide them the platform, the tools. We even do the trainings for them.
I see.
But they are the ones who goes on ground and service these, whether it's farmers and fishermen or even mom and pop stores.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks. Thank you for your explanation. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
How about you, Taku-san?
I think as a B2B, the how we adapt COVID is actually very rely on how the government react to the COVID situation, right? In Vietnam, like Vietnamese government shut down all the restaurant, hotel, cafe, and wet market too, right? So only the way our people can buy grocery is actually at supermarket, right? So basically, we shifted to sell to the supermarket because that is only the B2B are merchant who are active during lockdown time. Because we already work with a bunch of farm and they are already growing and harvesting, so they cannot waste it, right? Because there is nowhere to sell because the wet market even closed. So our job that time is maybe I'm not gonna make a lot of money out of it, but I mean to to make our relationship with farmers sustainable and also help each other. We just talk and like we sell to the supermarket.
Mm.
And then that business is still going on like after lockdown. So that is one of the kind of pivot we have to do during lockdown, because they are the only the people who are buying vegetable at the time. Yeah.
I see.
Actually, Taku-san, I have a quick question in terms of this. I read it somewhere in an article saying that this is pre-COVID, right? The typical method for communities in Vietnam is to actually buy their groceries off mom and pop store. So it's different from Singapore, Malaysia, where you already have large retail chain outlets like hypermarkets and whatnot, where they go into that. So a lot of these communities still prefer to buy from small mom and pop store. So in this case, during the pandemic, is it true, like when you said that the government is forcing these shops to shut down and close, and the only way for communities to purchase from supermarkets that's a quite significant shift, no? Because a lot of people rely on mom and pop stores to be their central or their normal way to procure their essential goods.
Yeah. So believe it or not, that's true. So because the reason why is like a lot of COVID case happen from the wet market. Because a lot of people go and they talk and they communicate, right? And like those are, so actually all the papa mama shop who are selling vegetable is actually within the wet market. So usually each district of Vietnam has at least one wet market. And before COVID time, like people go that wet market and buy, right? But a lot of wet market is actually a hot spot. Like a lot of COVID case happen in the wet market. So government decide wet market is one of the reason COVID is increasing. So they shut down all the wet market. Then still a lot of people hesitate to go to wet market now, actually. So it's a huge change, actually. And actually, there was trend already from the before COVID time. Actually, in Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi, like big city, modern trade ratio compared to traditional trade ratio is actually some people say modern trade is more than traditional trade already. Of course, there is no 100% accurate statistic about it, but actually Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi is more and more modern trade world now.
Interesting.
Cool. Thank for the very blended discussion, and I'd like to shift gear to a more specific question about your coping strategy. I think the audience will be very interested in how you see the strength of your business that you use to leverage to strive during the COVID. Also, how you see in the challenge that you might still need to use those strengths to overcome the coming challenges. So in particular, I like to, I'm very curious about the Oasis way, because, the difference between you and the rest of us is that you have existed for more than 20 years. And there are multi-crises in the past 2 decades. Okay, so in a longer history than us, you must have endured crisis over time. What's the difference between this crisis and the past experience?
Well, especially in Japan, I was considering about the past crisis, that a big earthquake in the year 2011 has happened, right? Well, but I don't want to say that, but I have to say that, somehow that the big crisis kind of, stimulate the customers, or like, be considered how to purchase the same product. Well, then the online business or like technology acceptance will support a lot for the many customers. Well, like as the tax said in Vietnam, I think the wet market is not really good, and maybe gradually they start to use the technology, or like even like a supermarket start to purchase the product like your tax company. Well, so like gradually that the older people even in Japan start to use the online business. I mean, online platform to purchase and waters, like heavy stuff, and then they start to concerning why bother to go to the supermarket to buy heavy things and might have to get infected from COVID. So somehow that, those kind of the critical phase is at the period that the O6 is, somehow, express our business, how our business is good. And, that's kind of the core competence can be that appear very efficient way. So I hope, this kind of crisis not quite over happen. I don't want to do that, but somehow, through that, some of the crisis, each crisis, and, customer gradually accept the technologies or using the digital platform. That's really for me for us, it's really good trend. They say that, why bother to purchase things in offline? They start to think about, purchasing such a grocery product, many Japanese still think, going to the store and buy things, or like touch and feel and, evaluate what the fresh product is. And well, that's still the ordinary thing, but gradually that, as customers, getting and working in home, and, I think even after the COVID, customers' lifestyle, especially work style, will, maybe spend more time in a home. Well, that means that, they're busy in home, they have to housekeeping and they have to cook. Well, then since we already, launched the meal kit called Kit O6, and also they, as I said, they get used to purchasing grocery products through online. So I think that those big trend is, kind of accelerate our business and one more. And then just like, you guys company, we kind of keep upping to the farmer, just let's have a direct business to us, we'll commit to the price. We have a customers, more than like 300,000 customers especially in O6 that exists. Yeah, they purchase the product, like more than 50% of the customer purchase it, every week. When they, why bother to go for the normal market? If you growing at the carrot a lot, and if the growing quantity is too high, then the prices go down. We have a commitment to price. So both commitment to that, not only the farmer, in case of customer. Yeah, we committed to deliver the safe and a nice product every week or every other week. Why bother to go to the supermarket? Well, that kind of communication was really tough 20 years ago, but now it's getting more easier and easier. So I hope that we can, more from now on, that expanding our business not only in Japan, but also the Asian market and also like the US and the European market. Yeah.
Thank you, Takashi-san. I'd like to change the spotlight to Taku-san. You mentioned that during the COVID, it's very impressive that you launched the B2C and quickly pivot, and now you are sustaining the business with the supermarkets. There are quite a few pivots. So what challenge did you face during the pivots, and do you see any more opportunity with the next phase and next kinds of B2C collaboration or opportunities? What do you see about this?
Yeah, so when the COVID happened, we didn't know that time. There's no vaccination and stuff. We didn't know anything. Like we don't know who is the enemy, right? And how to react to enemy, we don't know. That time, we started the B2C business. I think which a lot of similar business in across the region also did the same reaction to the COVID. And B2C business was growing every week, every month that time. And but as a business for long term, right? I think we discussed a lot internally, but the value proportion for B2B and B2C is not really the same. The B2B that we try to be like cheaper and faster and the one-stop platform and stuff, but B2C is many various reasons for them to buy, right? And the reason why we grow the B2C business during that time is actually because they don't have much choice other than us, because a lot of web market is closed and stuff. Of course, they buy online, but after the web market and supermarket reopen again, basically they go back to their habit again, right? So I feel, and also like as a company, as a startup, we don't have much resource and money spending for various business line. So actually we decided to focus on only B2B, but actually we still want to do like B2C, like which is like, we supply to supermarket, but supermarket is selling under our brand name or to the consumer. So that was actually one of the big learning, and then maybe it was mistake, but I learned a lot about what is the body proportion for this business. Because if the body proportion is different for the business A and B, basically we need to create a different strategy, a different team for both business line, and which is super hard for especially early stage startup. That's why we only gonna focus on B2B, because B2B is something my passion, which I started like about earlier, like 3 years ago. And so that we decided, we learned, we're gonna focus on one thing, like a very like laser focus on one thing. Maybe later, once we get bigger, we might open different business line. But at the moment, we should focus on one business line. That's what I learned.
Cool. Thank you, Taku-san.
Yeah.
Lennis, during COVID, Droppy has worked with fishermen and farmers to allow them to stay in business, like you just mentioned. For Droppy, it's a broader business, and F&B is part of it, or the agriculture or grocery e-commerce is just part of it. So how do you see a difference between, this kind of agricultural product and other kind of retail? And how do you really, evaluate different part, and what's a unique in this kind of F&B segments?
Yeah, there are only two key differences. So one is the way that the products are being delivered and being fulfilled, mainly because agricultural products is fresh items, some of them are frozen items. So the way that you handle it is very different from dry goods. So because of this, that it requires a little bit more care and attention to handle the delivery and fulfillment of fresh and frozen items. This means that the fulfillment cost is more expensive than dealing with dried goods, right? So that's one, the key difference. Second of all is the frequency of orders. So typically, your F&B store is very different from grocery stores, where grocery stores will have sections where they can store additional products to sell. And the shelf life is typically 12 months, sometimes even more. So it doesn't matter, right? They can stock up more in advance and that's it. Whereas for F&B outlets, you can't afford to do that. You only have very limited storage space, and you need to consume or at least use the inventories of what you procure on that day in itself, or ideally that week in itself, right? So that gives rise to a lot of optimization of how can we actually use our platform to enable these wholesalers, distributors, sometimes even farmers and fishermen, to deliver and do drop-offs to all these F&B outlets, to all these areas, so that they can optimize that cost. As mentioned, right, dealing with fresh products and frozen products is more expensive than dried goods. So that's something that, it requires a huge amount of data aggregation, bias aggregation, to understand that purchasing behavior before we can even advise where to drop off, which location first, to optimize their routings and whatnot.
Thank you, Lennis. It's very insightful. So I like to switch gear to more future focus. Okay, the first question go to Takashi-san. You guys are the market leader in Japan, Oasis, and you also made a couple acquisition activities in the global market.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how do you see the difference between Japan and some other regions, and what's your view about your global expansion?
I see. Well, yeah, in especially the food subscription business model, I mean, not only in Japan, but also like the US and Europe is of course very growing, and also, of course, in Asia also. But from our point of view, that, well, I think US and European market has a lots of opportunities as a O6, maybe just to deliver or like to give some knowledge to how to produce the Japanese milk. So there's a lot huge market potential exists in Europe and US. But just simply watching through like a business like HelloFresh or Weapon, those kind of things. Well, they are very good at acquiring money, gathering money, and get lots of customers. But these kind of businesses, main key point is LTV and retention. Well, in case of retention LTV, I think Japanese companies, quite doing a quite good job. So I think one of the good synergies, we can collaborate with Papu Carrot is that point. I mean, Papu Carrot business is kind of small, but during the COVID-19, their business is growing, and then also we give some good tips, to keep the business healthy. So that's really working well. And also, we got lots of knowledges from Puffcare, for example, like producing that vegan meal kit. And in terms of vegan meal kit, the market is not quite mature in Japan. But in case of our customer, O6 customer, is very sensitive about the food, and also they are very keen about kind of food culture in all over the world. So those kind of customers are purchasing that vegan meal kit for one day, maybe dinner or something. So we kind of launching marketing campaign with a 1 day vegan campaign. Well, why bother to just eat every day meat and fish? Maybe just one night, just enjoy the vegan. Well, that's kind of gradually accepted in Japanese market. So maybe by not exchanging the knowledges in European market and in the US market and Japanese market, we have a lot of opportunities. So hopefully we can get more collaboration with the US European companies. But on the other hand, once we considering that the Asian market, especially in the O6 overseas business, we still have not enough. Hard time. We still have a hard time because, well, they are happy to purchasing Japanese fresh foods or like our Japanese crab, those kind of product we simply export and they can simply get it and eat. But in case of cooking thing, as you guys already know, the kitchen space is small, and if you go to the B2C, just restaurants or nice cheap food are already in the market, so that's ready to eat product a lot. So I think we have to think about we have to more, how to say, conduct more marketing, like cooking is cool, or I think it's all the country like Europe and Japan, they love cooking, so unless to do that, because price wise is very difficult and procurement is still limited, in order to make that our best meal kit, like Japanese style meal kit. So I think in the Asian market we really have to find the good partners, choose to collaborate, especially to cultivate the B2C markets. So in that aspect, we really looking for like maybe good partner like you guys, or as a B2C platformers, well, otherwise I think we cannot survive in the Asian market.
Yeah. A quick question for Takashi-san, right? Like, do you find fulfillment to be, do you do your own fulfillment, or do you partner with third-party logistics to actually support that?
Well, in case of Hong Kong, we do our own. But in case of China, it's a very, very huge, strict restriction to export our goods to China. So we find out the partners like farmers, organic farmer in China, and then we use those products, and then procure those products and then made a meal kit in China. So yeah, each country has anyway, agriculture is a very governmental issue, so it's not easy just simply say, our apple is very nice, our apple is healthy, but it's very difficult.
Which leads to, maybe I know we have short of time, but I'm more interested also to understand, how do you guys ascertain quality? Because you're dealing with farmers, right? And you're making sure that these products listed on the shelves of these stores are of this good quality because it's your brand.
Yeah.
How do you do so? Do you have someone who checks?
Well, of course, we have to, somehow export our knowledge or know-how about the quality control. And we kind of, try to hire the customer, that the employee that, eager to understand our quality standards. So, I think, some human development is very, very, very important. And, they have to follow our rule, and, they know how to prepare the meal kit. But still, I think we need more time, just to get more good people and, teach them, and, and I think our Japanese should go more for the overseas department and take care about it, that business in Hong Kong or China. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in case of, Papa Carrot, they have their own way to cook. So that means that the only way we do this is someone just provide a software, like, recipes, those kind of things. And I think they can somehow catch up with our quality. But in case of Asia, it's quite difficult. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Thank you, Takashi-san. And the next question, Taku-san. I think that our guest also mentioned about, many aspects about the government restrictions. Also mentioned about the importance of a quality control, especially in the production area. It apparently become more important in the market like Vietnam. How do you see those two areas, especially in your future expansion and growth?
So I think the quality control is important, but cannot be perfect. I feel like there is a machine to check the whatever is inside stuff, but it's super expensive. So like only like a big company like a Dole invest tons of money for that, but that machine only can detect one SKU. Right? So we cannot buy a lot of machine for each SKU. That's impossible, right? So I did the research, but I don't think it's a good idea to do so because we have tons of SKU, right? So we still rely on like a people to check the quality from outside. Also cutting some of the sample and to check the inside. That sounds like very manual, but I mean, like if we invest tons of money for the machine, we cannot get back the money with the margin of selling the veggie. So that is actually the realistic way to do so. And I think one of the things we're gonna do, actually we are already planning to do in the future is going up to the as much as upstream of the supply chain. So basically, like we're gonna try to invest more fulfillment center in farming area, where we can go visit farm easy, and also farm come to our fulfillment center easy, and we have more cross communication. We have more cross check together. Because sometimes, like I think it happens often in e-commerce business that you deliver, and after one day customer complain, but I'm not sure like this is like your what is the root problem, right? So because we are solving the problem, but we're not sure like what is the root problem, right? So I think our mutual check is one of the way we can make sure what is the problem here and how we solve the problem, right? So we are keep doing Kaizen every day, every single day, every moment. To do so, I think we can try to set up more facility in farming area to check more. That's basically the direction we are thinking now.
Thank you, Taku-san. Lenny's Droppy has grown, pretty impressively to 100,000 mom and pop shops, and you also grown out of Malaysia to Indonesia. And how do you see your future expansion? What's your ambition and your plan of doing so?
Over the last couple of years, ever since we started Droppy, it's super important for startups to really understand where your core competency is. What are you amazingly great at compared to everyone else? And for us, at the end of the day, our DNA has always been able to provide that amazing quality service and build that service to build a long-lasting relationships with both buyers and sellers on our platform. So to answer your question, like because of that stemming from our core competency, so in the future, whatever that we're going to do is to actually improve the relationship and to build and strengthen that ties. Similarly to what Taku-san is actually, talked about, having each little hubs across these different areas to actually understand and be closer to the source, right? Similar to us, we've already have that community activators. They are the ones who are now going on ground, providing such service and whatnot. We're planning to invest more in that so that we can train more consultants, more individuals, so that they're able to enable this digital adoption from offline to online even better. Now, because we understood that in B2B, it's very much reliant on relationships. Businesses don't tend to shift the switching cost is very high once the relationship is built. So that's why we want to invest heavily a lot of that, because we're very, very strong in providing that amazing service, that amazing quality sort of like attention to these both buyers and sellers, so that both of them are able to actually, at the end of the day, why businesses go online, or what do they want at the end of the day? They just want more revenue. They just want more sales. And if we're able to help them to do so in an easier way, in a seamless way, and also improving their brand value over time, that's a winner already. So that's something that we'll plan to invest across countries as we expand and grow as well.
Thank you, Linus. We are running out of time. I hope that our guest has provided very insightful information and knowledge to our audience. So thank you again for our guests to be here and sharing your expertise to our audience. So is there any last comments you want to share with the audience? Takushi-san, Taku-san, and Linus?
From me, I'm happy to talk all of you, and I hope that from this session that we have a more touch point with our communication or interactive business somehow talk hopefully to the Asian market, because in our case that we are not only interested in that online food business, but also B2. Well, we are good at B2C, but we are of course interested in learning more about the B2B business. And also that of course we are more interested in like a food innovation business also. Well, if there's such a companies, such a opportunities exist, hope you can get communicate more, and hope, thank you very much for the time, talking, having this kind of session. Hope we can communicate further more longer. In the future.
Certainly. Thank you, Takashi-san. How about Taku-san?
So thanks a lot for having me. It's a great opportunity for discussing about the topic in F&B, and I think the startup journey is always keep learning, and I think learning from the different region is one of the things very important, because of course Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Japan is different, but from the difference we can learn something. Maybe I can share something too. So I think that is really a good opportunity for me. So thanks a lot.
Linus?
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer that, the future of this digital transformation across the supply chain, whether it's food, FMCG, etc., it's not a one-man show. It requires a development or a build of an ecosystem with multiple players working collaboratively and working cohesively with one another. So we at Droppy are definitely very open to collaborate with interested parties who share the same vision and mission as we do. We see that digital solutions, technology is an enabler, is the tool to help businesses to elevate themselves, for them to be able to improve the way that they actually do business, whether it's in terms of service, quality, or increasing their revenue. So anyone who wants to be in touch with me, feel free to reach me out on LinkedIn. I'm super appreciative that to be on this panel session today. Had a lot of insights. Thank you, Takashi-san and Taku-san, and thank you, Yuta, for Yuta. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it's amazing moderation. But yeah, thanks, guys. It's a fun time.
Thank you, guys. So thank you, audience, for watching the video later on. Okay. Have a good day. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Takashi, Taku, Linus, and Yuta. It has been such an interesting conversation showcasing the regional differences and diversity of the APAC region, and how players are adapting and looking ahead. Up next, we have Nick from Impossible Foods, Sandhya from Shark Meats, Sonali from Green Queen for the panel, The Future of Food, What Will We Eat in the Next Decade? Moderated by Mai from Muchacha. The four speakers are leading the alternative protein movement in plant-based cell-based production, from the media side to the restaurant side.
Hi everyone, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So our panel today is titled The Future of Food in Asia. What will we eat in the next decade? So we're really excited to have some incredible panelists join us today. We're trailblazers in the alternative protein space and a lot of experience. So you're going to want to tune in. They're going to have trends, kind of what they're doing and what they see happening. I'm Mai, your moderator today. I'm a self-taught chef, food activist, and co-founder of vegan restaurant group Uchacha based here in Taipei. So before we jump into the actual panel, I'd like to give each of our speakers a chance to introduce themselves. And I'd like to start with Dr. Sandhya.
Thanks, Mai. Pleasure to be here. This is Sandhya. I'm the group CEO and co-founder of Shiok Meats. By training and profession, I'm a stem cell scientist, but being a serial entrepreneur as well. And Shiok Meats is what I do right now. And Shiok Meats is a cultivated seafood and meat company, and we're headquartered in Singapore, mainly concentrating on cultivated shrimp, crab, and lobster currently. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Sonali.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Sonali. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief at Green Queen Media. So we're the largest sustainability media in the region, and we also are one of the leading outlets for alternative protein and food tech in the world. I also run two other companies. One is Eco Warehouse, which is a sourcing platform for certified organic ingredients. And I just launched sourcegreenpackaging.com, which, as the name suggests, is a B2B marketplace for sustainable packaging solutions from suppliers across the world as well.
Thank you so much. Oh, very busy. Okay, Nick, how about yourself?
I'm Nick Hala. I'm the SVP of International at Impossible Foods. I've been at Impossible Foods for over 10 years now. I'm also on the board of Kite Hill. And so at Impossible Foods, we're making meat, fish, dairy foods from plants that can outcompete the animal. Better tasting, more nutritious, and much, much more sustainable. And so we've been scaling our products over the last 5 years. The first 5 years were really focused on research to build new tools on how we can outcompete the animal. And now we have products ranging from beef, pork, chicken, US, and then Asia has been a huge focus for us for several years now. We have outposts in Hong Kong and Singapore, and getting ready and excited to expand to a lot more areas.
Wow, that's also a lot. You all are so busy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I kind of want to jump in because all of you mentioned, I'm hoping that there is some part of this that has to do with social impact. One of the biggest problems we face today is the climate crisis, and many factors contribute to this. So it's kind of a hard issue to tackle. But how do you yourselves personally kind of see the problem today, and how do you kind of face it? How do you, there's a lot to think about. How do you cope with it? So Dr. Sandhya, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think my solution to coping with it is Shiok Meats itself, right? And it drives, whenever I wake up every morning and read what's happening around the world, be it negative or positive. I open LinkedIn and all I see is the great innovations that are happening in the food and agri-tech sector. It's so much that it takes me at least the first 1 hour to sort of digest what's happening. And, we see a lot of Green Queen news as well there, but it's amazing. We see so many good things happening around the world. And then I see the other news where, you have a climate summit and then they have never spoken about food there. And then I sort of weigh in both the options and I'm like, you know what? We as entrepreneurs and innovators are already doing it. We're there. We're already seeing the change. And that sort of drives me every day in and out. And whenever I wake up in the morning, my team also shares about the different news that's happening around the world and what's in and what's out and so on. And that's really, really interesting for us.
Thank you. Sonali, how about yourself?
I have a very similar answer. Cynthia stole my words. If I wasn't doing what I do every day, I would be a truly depressed human being, because I'm acutely aware. I'm a researcher by nature, and this is something I've been looking at and studying for about 15 years now, which is the climate emergency and also just the general decline in global health. One of the things that's, quite different about Green Queen is the start, we've connected human health and sustainability. And I mean, it's, as a journalist, as an editor, as a curator of news, it's very difficult not to get bogged down by just how critical everything is, and how it feels in some ways that we are not making progress. I live in Hong Kong. The government just released their climate plan. They did not mention food at all. So in some ways, it does feel like we're just so far from where we need to go. But then what I do allows me to, as Cynthia said, be connected to the world of innovators, like Cynthia, like Nick, like their companies that have that hope that drives them to create a better world for our children and future generations, and even for today. And that's how I keep going. So I feel I'm a workaholic, but it's also part of it's my treatment plan for climate depression.
Oh yeah, I totally feel you on that front. And I love that you pointed out how the government still haven't hopped on board or seen this growing trend, right? And it's just exploded exponentially. Nick, for yourself, I read that you were the first employee at Impossible. So what kind of drew you towards that?
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. We're a very different company now than we were when we started. But so I grew up on actually a beef and dairy farm. And so I've been in food and agriculture most of my life. And then in high school, I started getting into renewable energy. And I think just being on a land all day, every day growing up, really made me like a deep personal connection to the land and the environment. And I looked at energy, and I was always really driven by science and technology. And energy was a place where science, technology, cool ideas could actually have a global impact in helping the world be much more sustainable. Because in fossil fuels, it's like, yeah, it's apparent that one is we're not going to have coal and oil and all these other things forever, even without the greenhouse gas emissions and those aspects. Two, it's really clear that the impact that the fossil fuels are having on the world. And so it's like we have to change that system. So I got really interested in that in high school. As a small town farm kid, had absolutely no idea what I could ever do in that. So I had kind of a winding journey to get to where I am today. But when I went to grad school, I worked all on sustainable technologies and how we can take technology and science to have a big global impact and positively, improve the earth, improve Mother Earth, and make it much more sustainable for our future generations. Because it's not like us that it's going to affect nearly as much as our next generations. And it's like we have to make the earth a better place every year, not essentially the other direction, which is we're going right now. And so I wanted to devote my life to that. And then when I met our founder, Dr. Pat Brown, he had been in the medical school for 25 years at Stanford researching genomics, medical diagnostics. But when he took a sabbatical, he realized that the biggest impact in the global environmental issues is animal agriculture. And I was in that industry for most of my life, and I had no idea. And I've been researching how I can have an impact. And then when we started going through the numbers of 45% of the world's land surface used for animal agriculture, more than 25% of the fresh water, more greenhouse gases than the entire transportation industry, and probably by far the biggest driver of species loss. It's like, wow. And no one was talking about it. And this is something I was like, okay, as then the way we looked at it is like, okay, so what makes meat, fish, and dairy foods what they are? And it's, mixtures of proteins, fats, micronutrients, and all those pieces exist in plants. The challenge is we use an animal to take it from plants and convert it into something that people like to eat. And animals are really, really inefficient. And so from an engineer's lens and a scientist, it's like, okay, it's really logical that if we get rid of that middle piece, we can be an order of magnitude 10 times more efficient and drastically reduce the resources of how we feed people. That's a mission really worth being part of. And then as I think about the future and where we're going, and I am an inherent optimist too. I think when you kind of come into a company pretty early, everybody here is you kind of have to be an optimist to succeed. And I look at there's a few parts that give me a lot of optimism. One is totally right. On the global stage, food and agriculture has been a really, really small part of the conversation, but that is changing. As you hear more people talk about it, you hear every once in a while, not all the government side, but you will hear governments talking about what we can do in food and agriculture now. 10 years ago, no one did. We look at the industry side, and now there's companies popping up every week doing something new, different, whether it's technology, brands, supply chain. And so more of the industry is starting to kind of catch on and saying, this is where things are going to go, whether it's existing industry or new industry. And three, on the consumer aspect, consumers are changing. Like when we started in the US and we launched 5 years ago, we do a consumer survey and why consumers in the US would buy plant-based meats. Number one is always taste. It has to taste good. If it doesn't taste good, people aren't going to buy. They're not going to come back. Two is nutrition, health. A lot of people are going to plant-based foods for nutrition and health. And like number 15, I think right at the bottom was like sustainability. Now when we do that, and like 3 years after that, sustainability was number 3 for consumers. And so they're making that connection with what we eat and the impact. And every time a consumer has an Impossible product, it's a real impact. Like every time in Singapore, a consumer has an Impossible product, 250 bottles of water are saved for every burger, every serving. And so it's like with that, is like every time as consumers, like we can have the big impact and work on industry, but we can also have impact in every single decision we make in life.
So, Sonali, have you seen this kind of savviness grow with like your readers and consumers as well? Like the conversations obviously probably are different now.
Absolutely. So there's 2 answers to that question. One is specifically in Asia. So the first time we wrote about the Impossible Burger was in 2016, which in Asia was pretty much one of the first times it was ever mentioned. We basically, because of my other business, I obviously was going to food shows all around the world and being exposed to the future of food and very quickly realized that, okay, this is going to be a revolution. So we were writing about it, but I was speaking to no one, especially because at the time our audience was much smaller and much more just in Hong Kong. And I remember Jenny from Green Monday, she's a dear friend and a mentor. She and I would have lunch every 3 months just to talk to each other about all of these new companies, of which there were only a handful, because we had no one to speak to, because no one knew what we were talking about. So we went from that to today, where Hong Kong is one of the most exciting places, as is Singapore, to discover all these international brands of mostly plant-based meat. And I mean, Singapore is of course the first place where cellular meat was tasted on a commercial level. So it's a completely different world. I mean, 2 years ago, nobody was talking about Singapore in the global food space other than, for the hawker centers and the street food. And today, Singapore is the leading food tech city in the world, along with maybe Israel and San Francisco. So, it's just on another planet, right? The speed at which the industry has progressed is crazy. And of course, with that has come consumer interest, consumer awareness. The other thing that's obviously changed is consumers in Asia are much more interested in being part of the solution for the climate emergency. And that I think is a broader trend. The Gen Z generation and to some extent the millennials, their global activist culture has spread across the world via social media, and they're much more united, no matter whether they're in Nigeria, in France, in the US, in Singapore, in India. It doesn't matter. All the Gen Zs are aware of the climate crisis, and they're aware that we need solutions. So they are making that connection. They're asking for the brands and the products that they invest in to do better. They're demanding it, in fact, on social media. So that's created a bigger awareness as well. But just in terms of globally, it does feel like we have finally made this connection between animal ag and the climate crisis, which is a connection that was made in a UN report in 2006.
Yeah.
But somehow it only really made it to the mass news. If you look as journalists, we will look at trends like how much is this topic being covered on a global level. And it's still very small in percentage compared to how much we now talk about the climate. And one thing that's interesting is Green Queen rather is one of the outlets of this movement called Covering Climate Now, which was launched 2 years ago to accelerate the conversation and the coverage of the climate emergency. So they're one of the reasons we now say climate emergency or climate crisis instead of climate change. It was co-founded by The Guardian and The Nation, and there are now outlets in over 100 countries. And I'm the only one waving the flag to tell them that food tech is part of the climate coverage conversation. still, so we have a sharing library. The idea of is that we all do reporting and then we can share it all across the world, and we can republish good stories, and we are the only ones that talk about food.
So do you feel like the consumers, the next generation, is like way ahead of the media landscape and
Yes.
kind of like these conversations?
Yes, because Gen Z consumers are not consuming the media, they're consuming TikTok media. They're consuming, to some extent, Instagram, but really they're on channels that the mainstream media has not penetrated yet. And so the mainstream media is still very, Western centric in many ways, very old fashioned. It's just, there's a hangover of time. And of course, that's why outlets like Green Queen can even grow and surge. If frankly, if CNN did their job perfectly, there would be no space for us. But myself and some of my peers, what are we doing? We're forging a conversation about topics that are just not being covered as much. Of course, now that the money has arrived in the space, mainstream media covers it, but it's still, we still tend to be the first point of call for smaller startups or smaller innovations. And of course, that's the mission of what we're doing. But yeah, the Gen Z is on TikTok. They're 20 steps ahead, and they're not sitting there reading CNN or Fox or even to some extent the Independent or the Times. That's really not how they consume information. So there is this gap between the activist Gen Zs and the status quo generations that are reading and consuming different media and therefore have different messaging. But at the end of the day, let's just point it out. This is COP26 week. They're still serving meat at the event. It's not a lot. It's locally sourced, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I think, another data point to back up exactly what she's saying is like when we put a job application out for like Impossible Foods, we'll get hundreds of thousands of applicants very quickly. And I think about that compared to past jobs I've had and, the old industry, and you say they put the same job out, how many applications are they getting? Especially for the younger entry level jobs. It's like the passion for the younger generations for what we're doing, for sustainability, for food and changing the system is super, super high. And we can see it in all the interviews we do for new applicants in the company. Every day we feel it. And I think that's also something that gives like me personally optimism, is like the energy that we have within these industries and how fast it's growing.
Do you see it as the same in both markets, like the US market versus the Asian market, like that kind of same fervor and passion?
It depends on which market. I'd say within Asia, I think they're very different between markets and where they are. I think, with Hong Kong, that was the first Asian market that we launched in 2018. And at first, I think it was kind of back to like, why are you here? Like, what is this for? And then as it builds, we're now in, I think, over 1,000 restaurants in Hong Kong and more than 100 retail doors. And we see a lot of other companies in the space in Hong Kong. Same in Singapore. We launched there a year later. And so the energy the last 2 years, I would say 2 to 3 years in Singapore too, has completely changed. And so I think people are looking for good stories of how we can help the world be a much more sustainable place. Mm-hmm. And when, new products, new ideas come out that can give people products that they really enjoy while doing something good for the world, it becomes a really easy choice for consumers to jump into that movement. And so I think as we go across and we're going to looking at, a lot of different countries throughout the world, every time we go into a new country, there's usually some element of like the old veggie burger world of some sort, which is like, oh, if I have, something from plants, it's not going to taste that good. And then once they try like products like Impossible, then that mindset totally changes. They're like, oh, this is really cool. It's like, this is actually really good. It's like, I can have something and do something good. It's like, this is something I can get behind and I can support and I can tell all my friends and start advocating for. And so I think that's really, common between countries. Now that cuisines and how it shows up and how you reach people can be very, very, very different. But everybody looks for good food and good experiences. And once they have that, and they also want to do something good for the world. And once they have that too, it becomes pretty consistent in how it spreads.
So Sandhya, I was going to ask you, you're based in Singapore, and that's kind of, everyone's mentioned like Hong Kong and Singapore as these like very strong hubs. Do you think you would have started Shiok if you weren't in Singapore?
Good question. I was just going to add in saying, being in Singapore, I've seen that change happen in 2018, 2019. In fact, I think, we started the company. So Shiok Meats was started in August 2018. And I still remember for the first 6 months when the government wasn't talking about the 30 by 30 mandate or anything to do with food tech or nothing. I think it was November 2018 when Beyond launched in Singapore, like in a restaurant or something like that, something along those lines, one of the vegan brands. And then that was sort of a movement. And then Impossible came along, and that's when the big boom happened. I still remember Lau Pa Sat in Singapore was where they launched first, and there was this huge line around the block. And my husband was in that line, for example. So I still remember all of this, and for the first 6 months of running Shiok, I still remember every investor, and we were pitching mostly to the Western investors because they were already, in the sphere in the ecosystem of alternative protein, whereas the Asian investors weren't at that point. So when we pitched to the US investors, they were like, why are you in Singapore? Why aren't you in the US? You should be doing this technology in the US. And Kai and I, my co-founder and I, stood our ground and we said, listen, Asia is the king and the queen of the future. This is where 65% of the population lives. So just understand our optimism, like Nick said, understand it and understand why we are here and see that it is going to be extremely successful. I still remember some investors didn't invest in us because we weren't a US company or we weren't looking at the US market per se. But I said, you know what, you'll see that change happening. And 6 months later, the week that we launched our first shrimp dumpling prototype is the same week that Singapore announced the 30 by 30 mandate. And then I soon had the same investors who said, no, reach out to me and say, oh, now we know why you're in Singapore. But, it was crazy. And after that, people wanted to invest in companies that were looking at Singapore, that were setting up shop in Singapore. And being one of those first ever cultivated meat companies in the region, the first 1 year went in pretty much explaining what cultivated meat is. At that point, it was called cultured and cell-based and lab-grown and all of that. And it took us 12 to 18 months to just make people understand what it was, where we make it from. In fact, one of the common questions that we used to get was, oh, you're like Impossible Shrimp. I still remember. And, they used to bring that up. And actually it helped. It wasn't a negative thought process. For me, I loved it that people already knew a brand that was working on zero animal cruelty, on alternative proteins. So it actually made a little easier for us to do our marketing. Whereas where we went and said, you know what? And you know what, Nick? We did free marketing for Impossible as well. So we literally went and said, Impossible is made out of plants, which is great, but we make out of cells, and we need both these products in the market for all consumers to enjoy. And we make seafood, they make beef at that point. Now they've, expanded into other meats as well. But I think the change that we saw over a year was so immense that now I don't have to anymore talk about why Singapore, why Asia, why Southeast Asia, why consumers here. None of it needs to be spoken about. Coming to one more point, which Nick brought up, which is very interesting, is the talent. We have people as young as 8, 11, 12 years old writing to us saying, we found you on social media. We came across your company somewhere, on Instagram or whatever it is. We're not on TikTok yet, but we're aiming for that soon. But at least Instagram is definitely the Gen Z sort of thing right now. And they've reached out to us and they're like, you know what, I'm so interested in sustainability. Can I come and intern for you? Can I be your brand ambassador? They've not tasted our products. They don't understand the tech yet, but all they want to do is support the whole movement. And that is so interesting because you know what? We are making these products for them. It is for the future generation. And I love it that as young as 8, 11 years old are writing to us. When we actually encourage them, we actually speak to them, we bring them to our office or lab, and we have like a overview of what we are doing. And they're so intrigued and interested. And most of them come back and say, when I'm in college or when I'm in university, I want to work for you. And we're like, yeah, please do come back to us. So I think these are excellent, so interesting movements that we have seen just in the last 3 years. And we have seen it through Shiok Meats lives. When we started, it was literally nothing. And right now, there are more than 100 companies doing just cultivated meat around the world. And a lot of them are in Asia. So this is the most exciting period that we are in right now.
That gives me so much hope. I cannot believe that they're so young and already so interested. Yeah, so, you know, like talking about all these issues sometimes can be very depressing. Sonali, you kind of said.
Yeah, I get really similar things. Not so much from, I'm not obviously as big of an outfit, so I'm not hiring in the same way, but I get pretty much every week, I get a request from kids at university or in high school that are doing some kind of research report on this topic and asking us if we can like speak or answer questions or help them. So that never used to happen. This is very much in the last 18 months. And I also think what Nick and Sandhya are saying shows you something that is so unique about APAC, which is when we take something on, it goes really fast. It did, I mean, San Francisco did not become a tech city in 18 months. You know, I mean, in Asia, we can do things so fast. It's just about, you know, having that commitment, which I think the Singapore government must be lauded for. They really doubled down and committed. There are other countries where it's starting to happen. I think Australia, New Zealand is starting, but certainly in other countries in Asia, we still have a long way to go.
So Nick mentioned all the markets in Asia are vastly different, right? So we know that Singapore and Hong Kong are obviously more mature. Me being here in Taiwan, I can kind of see it's at an inflection point. It's not quite there yet. They have like a long history of, you know, the faux meats, the fake meats, but they didn't really get into like the R&D of making something more, you know, plant-based, or they haven't really gone into the cell-based sector yet. But there's a lot of acceptance from the consumers. So for your companies, are you looking at all the different Asian markets and kind of what kind of areas are less mature than, like, let's say Singapore and Hong Kong that are just starting to kind of get into this space?
Well, yeah, I mean, India is not as mature. Indonesia and Malaysia are not as mature. Thailand is an interesting one because there's a lot going on and they're a manufacturing hub for a lot of brands, including global brands. So they actually have quite a few homegrown brands. So they're a little bit more advanced. But for example, Helga, who runs Green Rebels in Indonesia, I mean, she is one of 2 food tech companies there. And the other one is much earlier on, and they really struggle. I mean, Sandhya had trouble raising. They could barely get anyone to even, you know, help them in the beginning. It's taken them a really long time to establish a foothold, but now they're having partnerships with IKEA and Domino's and Starbucks in the country. But I think the problem is a lot of people compare Europe, the US, and Asia, and they're not in terms of being a one commercial block. But you can't compare it. In the US, first of all, it's 50 states, but it's one language, one currency, one federal system, one market. So if you launch something, you could, if you can scale fast enough, you could technically be in front of 300 million consumers. In Europe, it's similar. You have this Eurozone that allows you, but harder than the US, because you're still dealing with different languages and different retailers that have dominance, right? Then you go to Asia and it's each country is its own different thing. And I mean, Taiwan is a great example. You know, why wouldn't Taipei be a hub for all this? Well, it's a very different setup because Taiwan has been known for so long making these Buddhist mock meats. And so there's this resistance to this 2.0, 3.0, you know, wet moisture extrusion and beyond technology to do things better with cleaner labels. I mean, we've spoken to Taiwanese companies and said, you know, why aren't you going from 1.0? You could have cornered this market, but you didn't. Why is that? And there's a resistance. So you know, in Indonesia, of course, there's huge issues with distribution and shipping and logistics. It's just a very fragmented market, even if from a governmental point of view. Each area in Indonesia, just geographically, obviously, it's a lot of islands. And then, of course, each government just runs everything very much in their own little bubble. So it's very difficult to do a countrywide launch, you know? And in Malaysia, from what I understand, the budgets are just not there yet. Similar in the Philippines. I mean, yes, in Manila, there's a little bit of a scene, but you get out of Manila and there isn't the affordability for buying plant-based meats. I mean, and again, the Philippines, like Indonesia, has multiple islands and everything's very disparate and dispersed. So, you know, and then let's go to India. India, you just don't have the buying power for a lot of these products. So you now have homegrown entrepreneurs that are dealing with this. But again, they're still very much in the major metropolises. They're not able to reach second, third, fourth tier cities. And then China is an interesting market because I don't know, like Nick, I don't know if you want to speak to this because you guys are obviously getting your boots on the ground there, but everything I'm hearing lately about China is that it's a lot more challenging than people thought it was going to be. And Chinese consumers are a lot more demanding and difficult. They're not as bought in, so you don't get that environmental or ethical feel-good charge that helps to forgive some of the products in a way. They're much more going, is this good or not? If it's not good, bye. I don't care that it's saving the world. So, you know, it's just a lot more challenging than I think people thought it was going to be 3 years ago. Nick is probably a better person to speak to that.
That was quite the summary. I like
it was super good.
I learned a lot.
Learning about all the different markets. Yeah.
Totally. I think that, you know, one thing that's a commonality across all the markets is something we've kind of dubbed the plant-based anxiety. And when people have foods from plants that don't taste good and don't deliver on that experience, or they're super expensive and you can't afford them, it just makes it unaccessible and uninteresting to a lot of consumers. And so as we go into new countries, a lot of things that we work on is like, how do we tackle that? And for us, it's all about experience first and having an experience that is memorable, kind of cool, it's fun. And that kind of takes that away and says, oh, this is like, I can have meat. And in a lot of, you know, Asian countries, as incomes have risen, meat consumption rises. And meat is more of that aspirational desire. It's like, as you do get more income, you can afford more nutrient rich, tasty, diverse cuisine that, you know, typically is pretty heavy in meat. And so for us, like, we think a lot about that is like, instead of trading up to, you know, chicken and pork and beef, you know, trading up to plant-based, and like, this is going to be the desirable products more than, you know, the meat industry today. But the only way you can deliver that is with plant products that can perform on par or better than meat from an experience perspective. And I think in a lot of companies, and what I've seen in a lot of the new ones is, you know, for Impossible, we had the ability to spend 5 years doing research before we launched a product. And we put a lot of effort into that so we could compete and really compete head and head with the animal-based industry. A lot of products I see is like, okay, start a company and then next week you put a product into the market. And it's just not there. And I've seen this in a lot of countries where then I go and do these tastings. It's like, wow, it's like, this is still kind of the old school vegetarian food industry that is really made for the vegetarian consumer. It's trying to market it a little bit different, but it's still really for that consumer on an experience basis. And that makes it in some ways harder because consumers, what I am seeing is like, people are hearing more and more about this industry, these products. So a lot of these new companies that are creating like these really delicious foods, but then they go try something and they're like, oh, this isn't what I'm looking for. Is it just hype? It's like, what is it? And then, you know, and I saw that a lot. And I think in, you know, mainland China, there's a ton of movement. There's dozens of companies that are starting up and launching products, but most of them are pretty fast. And they're pretty fast to market, and a lot of the products aren't there yet. And the consumer also needs a reason to buy it. So one is you have to have a good experience, and then what are the reasons? Then you can get to the nutrition and sustainability and the reasons. But if you don't have that experience up front, then people don't even get to the reason. There's no reason to ask that question because I'm not going to come back and eat it anyway because I didn't have a good experience.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we're all speaking about food. So food, when you think about it as a normal consumer, what you think about is taste and price. You don't think first nutrition, you don't think first sustainability, you don't think first animal cruelty. What you think is, does it taste the way it needs to be tasted? You know, if I'm going to buy alternative shrimp, does it taste like the shrimp that I eat every day? You know, that's the first thing. Does it look like it? Does it feel like it? And then is it the same price? That's sort of what every consumer thinks about. So if the product is not delivering on taste, it's going to be very, very hard to sort of get over those hurdles that you get as you get to the large scale market. And I think Sonali sort of encompassed all the different countries, and I'm going to use a lot of that in my next couple of talks. But I think one of the things we have noticed always because we're not in the market yet, right? So people are already questioning the taste and what it is and so on. And one of the things that we have noticed in Asia is each country is like, oh, would this fit into our cuisine? Like, can I make sushi out of your shrimp? Can I make dumplings out of your shrimp? That sort of a thing. So we have to remember here, other than language and geography and the price and everything, your meat has to work in every cuisine that you're working on, or your product needs to work, and every cooking method that's possible as well. So one of the key things that our product development team works on is making sure that it can be deep fried versus steamed versus, everything else. Put it in the oven, put it in the microwave. What happens? You have to see all of that, because at the end of the day, when a consumer buys your product, they want to treat it like any other conventional product that they would buy in the market. So if it falls apart in the oven, they're not going to go back and buy it. They would rather go buy the conventional shrimp or the conventional meat that's out there. So we have to really, really remember all of this as well.
That's a good point. And that's, in our evolution in the Asian markets too, when we launched in Hong Kong, that was with Impossible 1.0 for our ground beef product. And it worked really well on a flat top in a lot of, some applications, but not all. And we learned very quickly in Hong Kong with our, restaurants and our chefs that the applications it didn't work in. And so it helped to be in food service in that regard. So we could actually have a lot more of those direct conversations with our partners that were like in the market. But when we went to Impossible 2.0, one of the biggest focuses for us, which was, a lot of learning from Asia, is versatility and the dynamics of the product. You can cook in any cuisine, different dishes, different heat levels, mixing it with sauces and spices. And it was a huge enabler to how we've been able to scale within the Hong Kong and Singapore markets of making sure we had that versatility. Because in the US, it's like most kitchens still have that flat top. And it was, I think I heard a stat that was like the average American eats 2 to 3 burgers a week. And it's like, okay, that's a big market itself just on burgers. But the differentiation, the versatility in the cuisine is so much wider in any within any market, and then across all the markets even more.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up, but I want to kind of end this on like a forecasting kind of trends. You guys talked about everything that's happening in all the different markets. Like everyone kind of wants it tailored to the individual cuisine and the individual market. Once we hit price parity with kind of these alternative proteins, what is the next trend? What happens next? That's kind of my question. Like what happens to this alternative protein space when, Shiok can actually release, their product and it's comparable and it's widely accepted. What is the next phase?
Hope it's not called alternative protein anymore. It's called just protein and just food and just meat and just shrimp, for example. So our, my vision, and I sort of sleep onto this every night, is walking into a supermarket as a consumer, you, me, whoever it is, my kids, my grandkids, whatever it is, walk into a supermarket or go online. By then, I don't know if real supermarkets will be there, but go online, and what you see under the frozen section or the sort of packaged shelf stable section is a huge, it's like if you split it into 3 sections, a huge section of it will be cultivated meat and seafood, and the next section will be plant-based meat and seafood. And then there'll be a very, very small section of like conventional meat and seafood that's sort of fading out over time. And people would sort of choose that only for a wedding or a banquet or something, only where they can spend a lot of money. And those conventional products are extremely premium priced, whereas ours are at price parity, ours are affordable, and actually consumers go in and choose the alternative protein products that are out there from the shelves. That's my vision, and I already see it happening. I've seen it happening in my local store in Singapore, where I'm a vegetarian by choice, and I still remember local stores had nothing for me, and now I see vegan products there. So I am so happy with the changes that I see, in the small changes that I see around the world. And currently I'm in Europe, and the amount of vegan products here are so many that the rest of my family eats meat, and they have to search for their meats. It's become like that. So I like it, and I see the trend already happening, and that's my ultimate vision.
I think I don't know. I think we are far away, unfortunately, if I'm being realistic, from complete, as you said, taste parity. We're far away from price parity. Also, alternative protein encompasses a huge range of technologies, some of which we're really just at the dawn of. One of the most exciting technologies I feel is precision fermentation technology, so synthetic biology. There's a lot of exciting companies in this space, not a lot in Asia Pacific, but certainly in Europe and the US. And I think they're going to do huge things in dairy. But I think for me, what is missing a lot in this space is the education portion or the translation portion of bringing people with Nick and Sandhia's understanding to the layman consumer. Because, I mean, half the people I talk to still think Impossible is cell-based. You know, I mean, people are just not, they're not aware of the technology. And I was on a panel yesterday with another founder, I've forgotten who it was, and they were saying, actually, it was an interview with Josh Tetrick of Eat Just, and he was saying that one of the things that surprised him after launching in Singapore and getting the regulatory approval and being able to present good meat, so his cell culture chicken, to diners, is that they had shied away from really talking about the technology and really just focus on the experience. But the more they did it, the more they realized that actually people do eventually want to understand what is they're eating, because it is a very different thing than plant-based meat, right? And for most people, cultivated meat, precision fermentation cheese, they don't understand what that is. They're not grasping it. So there's just this big delta of information and education and just introduction of concepts that's missing. In the same way that in the beginning, we didn't really understand how social media worked or how apps worked, or right? These are languages and terms that we've become familiar with over time. And so that's missing. And then on the other side of things, I think we need to get to where Sandhya mentioned, which is this is an alternative. This is happening. And I think one thing that a lot of people don't think about is if everyone in China started to eat as much protein as animal protein as everyone in the United States does today, we would need 7 planets. So alternative protein is not a choice you can make. It's a happening whether you like it or not situation, because we actually cannot raise the amount of animals that we would need to raise for the growth in protein demand that is coming. So I think this idea that you could kind of opt out and that it might happen for some people, but it might not, no, actually that's just not. We need new innovative ways to create protein for the human race, because we have too many people and they all want to eat protein, and we cannot raise enough animals. So I think that's a part of the discussion that I always find a little bit funny, because everyone always presents it as an either or, and it's just, unfortunately, it's not.
Yeah, I totally agree. Definitely. I kind of try to take people baby steps and kind of introduce them to kind of these things. And yes, it all starts with the taste experience, which is why I went the restaurant route, because really you can't convince people unless they've tried it and they've decided, oh, this is delicious. I just had a tasting yesterday, and one of the guys literally said, this isn't vegan food. Vegan food doesn't taste like this. And I'm like, it's literally vegan food. You are literally eating vegan food. This is what it could taste like. So, when we start rolling out like the Beyond Meat and someone who's never tasted it, unfortunately, we still can't get Impossible here. So Nick, just a little shout out. We've been trying to harass your team for quite a long time, but yeah, I know there's some issues there. We would love to get that in. They're blown away, right? They had no idea that this is where the market is at, right? They hear these names, but they've never experienced it. And now they have a new reference point and they have a new understanding. And yes, the education side is so big. So, besides running your own companies, like educating the consumer, how much time does that take for your companies? Like, this is part of it, right? These panels and these discussions. What other kind of ways do you educate the consumer?
Well, I think it depends on where and what you're trying to accomplish. I think there's so many different ways to reach consumers. And I think that's one of the global questions I think in food too is how do you reach the right people with the messages that help bring them along. I think to the first point, and then I'll kind of hit that is the way I think like where the future is going to go. You look at there's more than 700 billion pounds of meat consumed every year and growing, and to the point that as that growth happens, we just don't have the resources. We have to accelerate all these industries and move faster. We have to work together and find ways to move all this stuff much faster because we could flatline greenhouse gas emissions for 30 years if we transition to a plant-based ecosystem. And how much time that could buy us to solve all the other issues that we have and global environmental issues would be huge. And that's like the opportunity we think about all the time. And we talk a lot inside the company, and like every single day matters. Every day we work at this matters. Every day we can have an impact, it matters. Every time somebody has our product, it matters. And every time somebody has our product, that's an educational opportunity. It's an educational opportunity that you can have that delicious experience that you're just talking about. Or like Impossible Pork, we just launched in Hong Kong, and with Hong Kong and Chinese consumers in Hong Kong, we were preferred 54% to 46% over pork from a pig in a blind taste test. And so we outperform the pig. It's not that we're just matching that experience, we're outperforming the pig. And that's the thing that's going to really educate consumers, because once you have that experience that blows your socks off, then you actually want to know more. It's really hard if you don't have something that really resonates with you to want to know more, want to learn more, want to see why this matters. So then you can become an advocate. And we need to create more and more of those advocates and ambassadors in the industry that tell all their friends, and they tell other friends, they go try it. And then, you get that snowballing effect.
Okay, thank you guys so much. I've learned a lot and a lot to think about. Speaking with all of you makes me hopeful that the pioneers are kind of pushing for more innovation and helping to educate. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Nick, Sandhya, Sonali, and Mai, for sharing perspectives on the social impact side and the future outlook of the alternative protein industry. Until next panel highlighting robotics and automation in the F&B industry, featuring focus brands, Barista, Yokai Express, we'll take a 1-hour break. Please feel free to take advantage of the networking area and visit our expo booth, and come back to the main stage in 1 hour for the exciting panel.